Hello and welcome to Gaming Like It's 1979. Today we're going to be talking about the 1983-84 SSI game Fortress, written by Jim Templeton and Patty Denbrook. Fortress was one of SSI's so-called rapid-fire games. SSI was very much a grognard war game developer, and a lot of their games were very hard to get into, not very accessible. So around the mid-80s, they started making lighter games. So Fortress is a game that is very similar to Go or Othello, more like Go, kind of a scaled-down version of Go. It has some interesting mechanics that I haven't seen in any other board game. And it was one of the first games to claim to have any kind of learning or AI. So there is a number of AI computer players on the disk, and the claim of SSI was that as you played the game would get used to your moves and kind of figure out ways to reply to them. So let's change our players. For the white player, I will be myself. For the black player, let's see if I can do this. I think he's called the Squire. Let's see if I could spell that right. Right, and we could also display the roster so we could see all of the players that it knows about. Genghis Khan is probably the best one. Lord Maginot plays very defensively, but we're going to play against the Squire. And I'll probably lose this game because this game is actually fairly difficult, I found. Game length 21 moves, that should be fine. Siege warnings are on. Let's begin play. So we have our 6x6 board, and what we can do is we can use our arrow keys to move this cursor around, and when we hit enter, what will happen is, let's do it right here. Get something fairly central, not complete. You know what? Let's do it right there. A castle appears, and then we see that the castle controls territory around it. So those 4 squares around it are now white. So now the Squire has placed something a little closer to the corner. We can see that the Squire is controlling those territories, and these two cancel out. So now I have a couple of things that I can choose to do. One thing I can do is place another castle, which is what I will do. The other thing you can do is you can fortify a castle, which basically makes its zone of control that much stronger. But for right now, I'm going to place a castle here, and you will see the drawbridge on the black castle go up because it is under siege. The white castle is not under siege. Well, it wasn't until just then, because it is supported by this castle. So now we can see that all 3 of these castles are under siege, and the computer player has made a strategic error because with one move, which is to say fortifying this castle, I can destroy these 2 sieged castles. So let's fortify this castle here. And we have destroyed 2 enemy castles. So that's nice. That gives us quite a little base to work from. Maybe we'll actually win this game. I played many, many games of this against the computer in 1984, 85, and I never really came up with what the best strategy was. I am really bad at Go, if I'm honest. And this game is very, as I said, is very much like Go. It's about taking territory. At the end of the game, you can see down here in the lower right, it indicates the number of squares you control. So it is a game of territory and not just where you have your castles. So let's see, I could put it here. This is more central. I like the idea of having a kind of central core. Let's do that. Although that castle is itself unsupported at the moment, but it should be pretty easy to support it if I need to. All right, so this is a very bad move on the part of the computer, where it's placed a castle in a place where it is already under siege. So if I put a white castle in any of these places, it should destroy it and remain. If I put a castle here, it will further support this one. But I like the idea of taking more territory, so I'm going to continue to do that. Sieges are resolved in order. So the black castle disappears, and then the white castle is fine because the black one is gone. Had the black player placed a castle, then their turn would have gone first. All right, so we're in pretty good shape here. It's only turn 6. What can I do? I like the idea of extending this. You know, I'm going to actually, well, I could force them to defend this area. That seems like a pretty good move. I'm going to do this here. So the squire seems to be placing things fairly randomly. I'm going to continue to maximize territory rather than support, knowing that I should have an opportunity to support these castles if I need to. All right, very good. Now we'll start working on this. I think this is the weak link. If I put a castle here, that will be under siege, but then they can support it fairly easily. So I like the idea. Yeah, let's do this. Let's just continue to threaten that area. And if that forces the squire to respond in that area, that's all to the good. All right, so nothing's going on there for right now. We are going to go ahead and take some more territory. And if they want to kind of take the left-hand side of the board, that's fine. So again, the squire making some really bad moves here. I feel like it's not really representative of the quality of the game. I typically have played against Count Vauban, and the Count Vauban AI typically totally defeats me. I actually implemented for fun a Java version of this game back in the late 90s. I forget what I called it. I think it was called Bonagi. All right, so you could see that was a particularly bad move. The black player dropped a castle here, and it was just immediately destroyed. There are situations where that can make sense, but this was not one of them. If I were to put a white castle here, it would not be destroyed because it's supported by this one, but it would be under siege. So let's go ahead and start bringing in more support there, probably forcing them to defend. All right, so now this is good. This is entertaining. This is an example of an area where I could drop a stone or a tile right here to force this one to disappear, and it would then be under siege but not destroyed. But let's go ahead and drop them there instead, because I like to keep the territory. Okay, they're supporting their area. That's fine. We'll go ahead and do that. I expect we're going to very quickly get into an area where we're all simply reinforcing. All right, so that was actually a pretty decent move in a bad situation by the player. Has put me under threat. Of course, I'm just going to either reinforce here or put another castle here or another castle here. None of those gets me any more territory. So since this is the weakest link right now, I'll go ahead and reinforce it. I'll make the black castle disappear. Bold play. Bold, very dumb play. All right, so I have an opportunity here, perhaps, to fork the enemy. And I know this is safe because it has this white flag, which means it's getting 3 supports from there. So I think this is the time to do this. Oh, I thought that would put them both under siege. I must have miscounted. Fortunately, the worst AI player has made a terrible mistake. So great. Might be time to drop this one here. Well, let's go ahead and do that. There's no difference functionally between dropping a castle in a new place and reinforcing an old one. There's no real advantage to doing it one way versus the other, except you can, you can, if your castle is in a space, you're preventing the enemy from putting their own castle there. But of course, if it's an indefensible position, your castle will get destroyed, like so. Okay, so 17. I don't think I'm going to be easily able to defend that. Let's go ahead. Continue to support the leftmost castle. And I mean, this is a runaway game. 27 to 5 at this point. There's effectively no way the computer is going to catch up. We'll play the game out, though. I think that's safe. And we can... Now, at this point, we get a choice about whether we want to update the character's history. Sure, why not? Let's say yes. I don't think this disk is write protected. Now, this update history for the Squire, I believe, yeah, here we go. So, update learning. And so at this point, if we choose yes, the Squire will actually learn from our game, and hopefully next time we'll play a little bit better. I'm not going to do that in this case because I do want to preserve this disk as pristine. You should, obviously, if you get a copy of this, if you get this game, you should copy or back up the disk and then play on the backup so that you don't destroy the original state of these AIs. I don't think there's actually any way to reset them if you update their tables. So I'm going to say no here. You know what? I'm just going to skip that out. All right, so that is Fortress by SSI. It's a great little board game, and it's very, very obscure. Very few people have heard of it. Even fewer have actually played it. If you like games similar to Go, if you like computer strategy games, you could do worse than to find yourself a copy of Fortress. This has been Gaming Like It's 1979. Thanks for watching.